Well, I just gotta I'm gonna dial up my local hobby shop here. Gonna ask them about if they have any Howling Banshees on the shelf. What do you think the answer is gonna be?
Sold out.
Sold out? What do you mean sold out?
Sold out.
Why is stuff always sold out?
Good question. Games Workshop, why is stuff always sold out? I'd like to know.
You'd like to know? Well,
I think I know.
I think you know the answer already.
Yes.
We got a little theory for you fine folks out there on the internet. How's everybody doing? Welcome to another Lords of War Games and Hobbies video. I'm Chris, this is Jay, for those of you tuning in for the first time. For those of you coming back, thank you for coming back. I was just sort of like thinking about this topic generally this last week with all the craze over the new Eldar, rolling into the new craze of the Deathcore stuff, on the wake of the craze of the last thing that came out. I can't even remember now because it feels like an eternity ago, but it's so funny how things move.
What was before Eldar?
Yeah, there was nothing before Eldar.
What was before? Yeah. Huh.
Empire? Maybe?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. That's why I didn't remember.
That's not sold out.
No, it is not sold out.
Old world.
Old world.
And it got me thinking about, we've been placing our orders, and about, roughly 40% of the items are out of stock. And granted that number is big because, like, if something's out of stock and we order it every week, it stays on the sheet. So it kind of, that kind of number sort of grows and gets like inflated. So it looks worse than it actually is. It's not like 40% of the things you can order are out of stock. It's like actually a much smaller portion, but it's more like the hot things for the games and then like all of the new stuff.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I guess where my head goes a little bit about it is this actually a good business model for Games Workshop? And is it something that's like, not, I'm going to say designed, but like maybe it's an unintended consequence, but is this something that they're actually not unhappy about?
I mean, we use this motto a lot here, which is selling out, yeah. In general is like, it's that idea that if you order too little of something or whatever it is, you didn't hedge enough, and you could have sold more but you didn't, or whatever. Just selling out of an item is always better than having too many, pretty much every time. So I'm sure they don't mind that, because they made the thing and they sold the thing and made their profits. So on the books, in the warehouse, logistically, they probably like that. Now, obviously, there's a knock-on effect, which is you do cause some damage to the customers a bit. Like it does. But I don't know. I think long-term, it never really is that big of a problem. Like, people continue to buy the thing.
It's a good, I like your first point, which is basically like, it's important to point out that turning over all of your product, 100% of your product, and taking that money in is a good thing.
It's max efficiency.
It's very efficient, right? Yeah. Now, and then your second, you're kind of going into with your second point is that, like, the question is, what is the number you could have sold, right? And to take it to the next point, does that number diminish over time if that item remains out of stock for a long period of time?
Probably.
Right?
Yeah. People will lose interest. They'll throw money at something else. That's all. Most of the buying is the FOMO.
And then I'll turn that question around again, because I think there's a devil's advocate thing you could say, whoa, spin the head around, is does the selling out model, let's call it that, this is a theory, unproven theory, the sellout model create more demand artificially and drive up the number of sales in the initial run anyways? Sure. So if you had too much stuff, or not too much, but if you had more than enough and things weren't selling out, would you sell less? It's kind of a weird psychological thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, and obviously I think these are things are hard to prove.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, yeah, I think there's definitely occasional situations where they think something will do better than it does. Like, probably like Hivestorm. They probably...
they thought it would do better than it did. Yeah, for sure. So they launch boxes, for some reason, they haven't caught up on that. Like,
which is weird, because the graph is pretty obvious in that if it's 40K, check mark, yes.
You just approve the amount. You see,
Yeah.
you see the guy gives you a number. You just go check.
Yeah, check. It doesn't
Can we
matter.
can we double that?
Yeah, and that's fine. If it's double, triple it, it's fine.
Yeah.
Any other game?
Let's cut 30% off.
Let's just cut it down.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah. Let's make it special. and
whatever it
unique
is,
and-
whatever
yeah.
number that even if they wrote down 10, let's take 3 off. Let's just
Yeah.
So yeah, they definitely don't have it right 100% of the time. You know, it's funny. Even with this Eldar thing, I can tell they made a lot of it because even our asks. So like so you put it in perspective. If we're asking for 10 Fugans or something, or 12, which is like for our meager store, like a nice amount. That's
That's a lot. Yeah.
that's 10 people that want it, or 10 or 12 people of our local customer base that would like to buy a Fugan with us, and that's like, you know, $550 of revenue here, or $700 of revenue, or whatever, before costs and etc. And if they were able to fill that pretty much, and there was still some availability on the web store the day of, and it wasn't gone in like 5 seconds. I think it was like probably a couple hours. So there's higher volume stores that are ordering hundreds, and they're probably getting them. You know, so they probably made a lot.
You know what's funny? A complete funny segue about the Phoenix Lords. Warhammer stores didn't get them.
That is a very yes. I'm aware of this part, and I
Isn't that a
couldn't believe it.
yeah? It is almost unbelievable.
Yeah. I had a moment where I was like, is Games Workshop like galaxy braining, like just or doing? Is this like a little silent freebie? Like, here you go, guys. I don't understand what the business case was on their end, because they could have had all the money. Like,
I think this is obviously we're
really
getting off
weird.
topic here in the video, but like maybe it'd be a fun topic.
like
for
if you're
another
not
video.
buying Fire Dragons and Fugan, what are you doing with your life? Like, what's
I would
wrong?
make the case that the Phoenix Lords are more popular than the kits.
Oh, 100%.
And a lot of that has to do with like the specific Eldar nostalgia people have, and the lore. Like, people love the Phoenix Lords, like they're beloved characters.
That's the first thing I read about when I opened the book. Yeah.
Randomly, like, you know, and I'm going to make a regular video about this at some point, but I painted this model 28 years ago in metal, and man, nostalgia is like a powerful thing, right? Like. I'm not even collecting an Eldar army like Jay is here, but I just had to buy one. Like, I just need them. Like, it's super cool. But aside from that, yeah, it's fun. It's one of those things where, like, I think just based on the processes that they have in place, they sometimes apply these like general rules to things. Like, Phoenix Lords are characters. We sell less characters than we do infantry kits, so we should not supply them in much volume. Like,
it's just nuts,
that's not to say that you. It's like saying, like, oh, we're gonna sell less Lionel Johnsons because, you know, he's a character. It's like, oh, let's be careful, guys.
There is a disconnect. And the Lionel Johnson one was another weird. They went kind of the other way with that one, also to the extreme, where they were like, they made a mini launch box because they wanted to sell him and some
tiny
Blade
amount,
Guard.
yeah.
And they made like a tiny amount of those.
Just pissed everybody
Stores got
off.
like 2 or 3, and we were like, oh, this is stupid. And then the general release was like not enough either. And like, there's one they could have safely made, like whatever number they were thinking, the double, triple, like, and it will sell fine over time. I still sell Gilliman's like on a weekly basis or whatever you want to say, and all the Primarchs sell super well. So so there's obviously a disconnect. I think at least our empirical inferences are just solely like there is a disconnect between like the marketing or whoever is in charge of how many they make based on the data. Their data analytics sucks in that regard. They're not doing
or like, that's where I put on my tinfoil hat. You know?
And then sales is notoriously bad for like in any discipline to gauge. You know, because they're the company making the product is relying on marketing to like hype it up enough. And all these things, and then the reviewers are another variable, because they'll say like, oh, this is, you know, in electronics especially, they're like, oh, this thing's actually rubbish or something, right. You know, anyway. So go ahead,
but so like, if I was to put my tinfoil hat on, and it was like, well, either giving them the benefit of the doubt, saying like it could just be a capacity thing where like they can only produce X amount of units because they have to make X amount of other things, and it's just like, this is all we can do. Fair enough, that might be the case, or. You know, tinfoil hat goes on, and you said, well, maybe they're really okay with this, like, things selling out and being out of stock. And then, like, all the chatter and talking and what is negative emotion or whatever that gets put out there manifests itself into the internet, and like it becomes like this weird marketing tool for them, where like they're just always being talked about.
Yeah.
And it's that old story of like any news is good news sort of thing if you're selling things, right? Like you just if people are talking about you, whether you're doing a good job or a bad job, they're talking about you. And people are, it's when people are going online and complain, I can't get a PlayStation 5, it's impossible to get a PlayStation 5. It doesn't make PlayStation 5 worse.
No.
It doesn't hurt Sony.
Nope.
It just makes the demand go up, and people start like getting more excited about it, right? So yeah, I don't know. It makes me a little bit conspiracy theory with that, where I just think like maybe there's something to this. Like maybe they're thinking, man, it is really nice, just like we think. It's like, man, it's nice to just sell out and be like, wow, we killed that release. Let's do the next one.
Yeah,
and just kind of keep hitting it off like that, right? and GW has become such a new release business now. That like the ability to keep pumping out stuff and selling out of each thing they make, man, that's pretty impressive.
It's very strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, again,
not Empire though.
Not Empire. Empire's not selling out anytime soon. That's why I love to compare them with Lego. It's a similar thing. All their best special kits sell out, and sometimes don't come back for ages, or they do limited. So I think, although GW hasn't overtly like said this. They're slowly, or they've already become, they're basically, it creates a collectibility. And just like, the card world, the collectibility is very strong. It makes the products hold their value incredibly well, go up and appreciate in value. It doesn't, like you said, diminish anything. It doesn't make people want it less. It's this kind of the opposite effect happens.
It kind of creates this like you were even like, it was funny, a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about putting our Eldar numbers in. I was making fun of Jay because I'm like, this guy's being a bit of a smaug or whatever. He's like, I want this thing for Eldar, I want this, I want two of these. He's like everything times two except the Phoenix Lords is there. And I'm like, man, like, why do you need that all right now? You're not going to work on it. He's like, I want it. Yes. And I want it now.
And I want it.
And it's going to go out of stock.
And it's going to go out of stock.
And I don't want to worry about it later.
Exactly.
And I'm like, and you know what?
I'm just going to take it. I'm going to put it in a little tote later and get back to it.
And it'll be yours. And no one will be able to get it.
And as the world is currently going on a daily basis, worse and worse, I may need to sell that Phoenix Lord for double the price on eBay so that I can, pay my bills. So,
I just got into a politics show.
A little bit, yeah. So,
No, but like I think
what if there's a tariff on plastic?
It speaks to the sentiment of like what's going on, where I think like Jay's mentality with that release isn't. It's not. You're not in the minority there. I don't think. I think people are starting to think, like the consumers are starting to think like that. And if that's the case, I think Games Workshop's got a real home run.
Oh, yeah, it's good for business.
Holy cow, man! Yeah. If you feel like every time something comes out and you're like, I like this a little bit, I should grab this while I can. Yeah. Holy cow! That just. Whew, that's powerful.
Yeah. The opposite of tinfoil hat. I don't know. All the evidence we have is that they are actively, desperately trying to increase capacity where they can.
Yes. Yeah.
It's in their financial reports. They need to. They've been acquiring land and building buildings, and they need to. They've been upgrading power grids and this and that. And again, as I've reiterated, I've seen the model making machines. So has Chris. These are large. How to describe it? Very complex machinery.
It's industrial machinery. Yeah,
it needs it's technicians, a ton of space. It needs a lot of power draw and all that. And these things are running all day, every day, and there's printing time, like you said. Maybe they would have made more, but they can only allocate so much printing time because if they divert more to it, then they're not able to get you your other stuff back in stock that your common staples that that they need. So. It's probably a bit of both, yeah. I think on one hand they love it and they're happy, and they probably do tighten some numbers. I think purposely because they're like, we don't think this will do that well, or we want to just sell out of this thing and move on. I'm sure launch boxes are one of those things that they love to just make just the right amount of, or not enough of, even because they don't want those lying around. That's It's probably predicated on whatever print run of special books they made.
Ironically, because it's the one thing they can't seem to get right.
Yeah.
They probably don't want them around forever, but man, they cannot seem to get the numbers right on the launch boxes.
No. I'm sure they love the made to order stuff. And anytime they do a little run of Forge World or something, they love that sells out. Yeah, it hasn't really hurt them that bad yet. People complain. A lot of people are upset when they can't get a thing. But I think that what's unique to the miniature hobby is that you kind of probably have so much in the backlog, likely, if you're a fan, that you just kind of move on. It's like a very, like, once like our friend John always says, once you sleep on it for a week or two, you're kind of just like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think there's well, John's a machine.
Just another machine.
Like, yeah, let's not compare people to John.
Fair enough. Okay.
I think sometimes the opposite can happen, which is like really powerful for GW. Is like you want something, you can't get it. It creates like that like mysterious sort of like
we do hear this
it's hard to get, and I want it because like
I mean we get phone calls every day probably someone being like, "You have this?" And I go, "No," and he's like, "God, I can't get it anywhere." And I'll be like, "Yeah, it's sold out."
It's sold out. Yeah, that's like, and that's why.
You're like the 18th store.
I'm like like that's the best, right? Like you're like,
I was number 18.
I love that I'm number 18 for you. You know, it's so good. You know, it's so good that I'm that high on the list.
So high on the
18 out of 19.
Out of 19, yeah. He still checked all the 50% offs first before.
Absolutely. The worst part too is like you try to. While you're trying to explain to them why they can't find it and to stop wasting their time calling stores, they're like hanging up on you.
He's already ready to dial.
Yeah.
Like, it all comes from the same place.
I'm trying to help you.
No one has it. Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's a tricky thing. I think like here's what I'll say. I think from Games Workshop's perspective, if I can pretend to know that. I think of all the scenarios, this one's probably the safest, right? Like you're performing in terms of like corporate success, like you're like growing like crazy. You're selling through each of your releases. We always talk about like with big businesses, any business really, downside risk is always the thing you talk about, right? If increasing your production and making like 30% more Eldar, 50% more Eldar, 100% more Eldar, I'm not going to call it like risk per se because those kits will sell over time, but risk associated in the sense that like any leftover kits need to be stored in the warehouse.
Yeah.
There are like some costs associated to those things of overproduction. You could have produced something else that could have sold faster right away. So I think the setup they have right now, as long as they're like growing still, and they are very much so, is probably like the safest like business model they probably could have, right? Yeah,
and look, I'm sure they qualify them. I don't know how they internally have these discussions, but they probably they're keenly aware that they're in this. They straddle the line between being this like mainstream toy company, well nowadays anyway. But they're on the like luxury end. So they, again, there's so many analogies, parallels, so many companies you can think of, but like you see this a lot with Japanese brands like the Nintendos and the other toy, like a lot of stuff that's like made like that. Or if you look at other, whatever Italian luxury brands, I know I'm going a little extreme here with like, things that are only made of in like really small amounts and are really exclusive, but they're kind of like straddling that, where they see themselves as like, part of why we can sell this box for $75 for 3 minis is because it has the Warhammer tag on. It's very powerful, and if we make 1 billion of them, then we won't be able to sell them, which then means we have to lower the prices and do all these things. So they're kind of happy to live in that world.
Right.
It means like very nice margins, sell-through rates, keeping that mystique and specialty about it. And when you get your hands on it, if you're a fan, it feels great. I nabbed one; it's been selling out everywhere. Like it makes
going to the store special too.
Very powerful.
Having good we like it because like it means that customers have good relationships with us. And like people get in the habit of asking us for things, which makes our job a lot easier too, because we know then how many things we need to order for the releases, which can be a very complicated process for us. I think it's pretty good. Like, I don't know, like I don't have too many complaints about it.
Yeah, and with only a few exceptions, I would say there's a few categories where this is like obviously extra stinky and horrible. If you're a gamer,
Yeah.
It's constantly frustrating and annoying because they will write good rules for something and you just can't get it. Like things like Chaos War Dogs or something for the Chaos Titans, which are just, I don't know, still not easily available. I think they came back for 5 seconds or whatever hot unit that you just can't get. And it often also happens on legacy units that they write powerful rules for that they had no intent of printing more of because it's like from 4, 5, 6, 10 years ago. So if you're on the gaming end, you're always just like, like...
well, and we always make the case, you know, it's just one of the reasons we like really try to promote like a collective mentality with armies.
Sure.
And like if you're, I get it, like, you know, if you're like a hyper competitive gamer and you're always trying to chase meta and you're trying to buy X, you're being very lean about your purchasing.
You don't like buying a
like,
thing that
you don't want to buy.
Use, yeah.
But like it's hard not to argue that in today's constantly changing updates and the churn and burn of rules and all that stuff, that like having a collection of models is going to ever like hurt, you know? Mm-hmm. And it does really make a case for someone who like just collects an army and then pulls what they need out of it for the new competitive list or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, that is, although also the most expensive thing you can do, but is it really the only way to like try and mitigate that?
Yeah.
Hopefully then you just need to buy the new book and off you go. But and other than like the Lionel Johnson, although you know you could argue that was they will say that it was pandemic era or whatever, which it was, and some of their big launch boxes like a Leviathan or something, with a few exceptions, they usually get it pretty close. Like I haven't had too many times where I was like customers like even a week or two later, can I get one? And I'd be like, nah, it's over. Like usually I can get them what they want, you know.
Within reason, for sure.
Yeah, so it's definitely not so bad now compared to a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago was worse, but even our wall here, like after the huge Christmas rush, is like settled down. We got most things back in. I don't know. I haven't had too many new releases that have been cut short or.
No, it's been pretty good. It's been pretty good. Like I feel like we, and for our mid-sized shop, whatever you want to call us. I think we're very rarely reduced on our numbers of things we ask for. I think we're in a pretty healthy spot. I think overall. I mean, obviously, we would we like to have some Nemesis Claw once in a while. That'd be good. But like other than that,
you know what?
There's always a rare kind of kit.
They did okay with that because I remember the first batch gone, or no, there was the 2-player box. Then they got a restock in, and so there's been a couple waves. It's not as bad as some like the Lionel Johnson or the War Dogs or whatever those situations where it was like felt like a year went by.
It's just one of those like rare kill team boxes that like people want to play it in kill team, but they also want it for their Space Marine army.
Plastic Night Lords,
they're phenomenal.
One of the most popular legions in the universe or whatever. Yeah, Batman's.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there you go.
We solved it. We figured it all out for you guys.
Not
Aren't
really.
you grateful?
Yeah. Buy everything now. Buy it before now. As soon as this is the last little bit.
This is the shilliest shill video.
It is very shill. So I always tell people, like, the second you get a sniff of something coming, you have to tell me then. So when you saw,
or your local shop,
When you saw, no, tell me. When you saw,
no, tell me.
When you saw.
Remember that video on like support your local store? Forget about that.
When you saw that piece of Fulgrim's like tail or something, like you should be like, "Yo, Lords, put one aside for me now."
I want to be on the list. There is a list. There's always a list.
There's always a list. Yeah. That's basically how you have to go about it. Yeah. Although with the crazy rolling release window, like no one actually know. Like I kick all the time. They're like, "What's this week?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
Couldn't tell you.
They're like, "You don't know?" I'm like, "I don't know. No one knows. Let me go check or whatever." And then and it takes me like 5 minutes to dig through the multiple emails of the dates. I'm like, "What is on? Oh, there it is. Okay, this is on pre-order. This is for." And they're like, "Oh, okay." So it is a little nuts.
It's just crazy, yeah. But that's the reality now, right? It's just all releases all the time.
All releases all the time.
And we're just adjusting to it. So what do you guys think about the sellout thing? Do you guys have issues getting models that you want? More importantly, how has it changed your purchasing behavior? That's kind of the thing we're kind of interested in. Like, has not being able to get something completely turned you off it, or did it make you more ambitious in finding it? Did you buy something else instead? Did you go to a different game? Like, what's the
Games Workshop's like eagerly listening for that answer. They're gonna troll the comments and be like, This is gold.
This is gold. Yeah. like they know we exist at all.
yeah.
Well, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. You can support us on Patreon, Lords War Games and Hobbies, and we're going to be doing more stuff with that this year. So check it out. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.